is not already listed on the agenda can do so. We don't have any sign-ups this evening, so if you'd like to speak, raise your hand. I can call you to the front and again, speak on anything that's not on the agenda. Try to keep it to 3 minutes. And please state your name and magisterial district for the record. So first, we'll go ahead and call to order. And is there anyone who'd like to come and speak at the Citizens Forum? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Chairman Bates and members of the Board of Supervisors. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight, and I hope everyone had an extremely nice Easter with your family and friends. Support Culpeper farms and their businesses. Support programs that help farmers to continue to farm while maintaining the rural character of Culpeper at the same time. We are pleased to hear that some common sense revisions to the zoning ordinance and policy are being discussed. It's important to use a holistic approach when making decisions. If some of the previous board would have, we would not be facing the multiple of housing projects without the infrastructure to support them. The Culpeper that we all enjoy today is because of Culpeper farming community. Farming has been the backbone of Culpeper for many generations. We must do everything possible to help protect it for our children in the ways that our forefathers and mothers did for us. One way to help is to support Culpeper businesses that help support Culpeper farms. The Culpeper Farm Bureau is a prime example. It's a win-win. Help yourself as well as the Culpeper farming community at the same time. Some of you supervisors are members and understand the benefits of the Farm Bureau here in Culpeper. Farm Bureau is not just for farmers, it's for everyone, whether you live in Culpeper or not. I switched my auto insurance from a local business here in Culpeper to Farm Bureau, and I saved 50% as well as getting twice the coverage. I can't believe the savings and benefits that I have received. I now have my home and liability insurance with Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau has renters policies, business policies, general liability, health, life, farm, auto, and personal businesses, umbrella, and insurance, and many, many more. Again, it's not just for the farming community. Call them for a quote, 540-825-0682. And no, I'm not getting paid, just in case you want to know. Support businesses that support farming and support businesses that support our community. May God continue to bless Culpeper County and this farming community. And I yield back the balance of my time for next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come and speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public forum. Moving on to our next item, 3.0. We have an agenda before us. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll approve the agenda as presented. Next item, 4.0, is our general county business, and this will require a public hearing. The board will hold a public hearing and consider an amendment to County Code Chapter 12, Article 16, Sections 12-262 and 12-273. The amendments would allow for vendors to retain a 3% administrative commission on food and beverage tax collected and would clarify the section regarding interest and penalties. And with this, I'll turn it over to our county administrator to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. As stated by the chair, this is a minor code amendment that is subject to public hearing this evening. In a nutshell, the board adopted its food and beverage tax in 2022. At that time, the level of the tax was matched up with the town of Culpeper to make that a fairly seamless thing. But at that time, our county code provisions that were adopted did not include any provisions for our vendors to collect any type of commission to assist with their administrative costs. It's come to our attention since that time that the town of Culpeper does allow 3% of the total tax collected by the vendor to be retained for an administrative fee. So if adopted tonight, this modification to our code would allow vendors in the county outside the town limits to retain that 3% commission as part of their collection of the food and beverage tax. And again, that's 3% of the entire amount collected. There's also an amendment proposed to a different section of the same code that addresses a little bit of legal cleanup regarding interest and penalties. And that's my summary, Mr. Chairman. Again, it's subject to public hearing this evening.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions or comments for John?
Yes, I'm wondering, I believe the tax for last year was $542,880 and change. And I'm wondering, do we have any idea of the cost of administering the program?
I'd have to defer to our Commissioner of Revenue in terms of the cost to the county.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that, Mr. Underwood.
Okay. Is it possible to ask her now? Yeah.
Michelle, would you mind coming forward?
Thank you very much for being here. Sorry to put you on.
Supervisor Underwood, at the moment, a lot of the time that's being invested in administering this is really a time that's not compensated to folks like me and my chief deputy. In the budget this year is the position that we discussed last year, and you pretty much approved last year. So we're hoping it will have some expense, and I think there's a salary that's built into the budget for that position.
Okay. So just for rough figures, fully loaded, guessing broad swaths, because the 542 is broad swaths, would 125 be a reasonable guess for fully
that's-
loaded?
Probably over
Okay.
estimated, but
Well, then 100 then?
I would say yes.
Okay,
By the
great.
time you add all of the benefits and so forth that you have to provide.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay?
I appreciate
Any
it.
others while I'm here, folks?
Any other questions for Michelle?
Oh, yes, one other, sorry. How many people pay the meals tax, or how many businesses or entities pay?
I don't have the count with me right now, but it's actually going really well, and some of the businesses that are mobile that I think there was a little concern with, that's going very well, too.
Okay,
So we're pretty pleased at the outcome of folks that are contacting us, that are filling out the registration forms, and are coming in and bringing their forms monthly.
okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, are there any other questions or comments for staff before I open up the public hearing? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for anyone who'd like to come and speak on this matter. If you'd like to raise your hand, we'll call you to the front. Yes, sir.
Don H. Stevensburg. Not really a comment, more of a question. My question would be, what would be the impact on businesses for the cost incurred for collecting these taxes? Obviously, they have, obviously she said monthly, they have to calculate and bring that fund in, and obviously whatever other overhead that they might occur. So my question would be, what would be the impact on businesses to administer this cost? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haight. Anyone else like to come forward and speak on this matter? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open it back up for discussion or comments if we have any, or entertain a motion.
As for discussion, to follow up on Mr. Haight's comment, if I calculate what the 3% would equal, it's slightly more than $16,000 a year to administer this. Having talked to those in the Salem district that are impacted by it, and there are some businesses that are significantly impacted by it. We have a tax right now that if it were $100,000, costs about 20% to administer. That's huge. If it costs 20% and you're getting 80%, at some point it'd be worthwhile to look at it. And I suspect their cost of administering it is significantly greater than the $16,000. There was another business in the district that announced in an article to the Star Exponent that they stopped serving meals because of the tax. So there are impacts. I'd hope that at some point we look at the tax overall. That said, I certainly support any cost sharing or anything that we can offer relative to administration as long as it exists, so I'll support the 3%.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Any other comments or questions? Or we'll entertain a motion.
Move. Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion that that the board approves, where is it here? The amendment to County Code Chapter 12, Sections 12-262 and 12-273.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous, Ms. Ellis. Moving on to item 5.0, again, Planning Commission business, and will require a public hearing. Case number U-915-24-5, request by Raymond Bender, Our Father's House Christian Home, to amend an existing conditional use permit to expand the assisted living facility. And with this, I'll turn it over to our zoning administrator, Neil Drumheller.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll begin by reading the letter of recommendation from the Planning Commission. Dear Chairman Bates, the Board of Supervisors will consider a request by Raymond Bender of Our Father's House to amend existing conditional use permit to expand the existing assisted living facility per Article 3-2-2.3, referenced in Article 4-2-2.1 of the zoning ordinance and in accordance with Article 17, use permits of the zoning ordinance. The properties are zoned A1, agricultural, and RA, rural area, and are located on Belpre Road, Route 684 in the Stevensburg Magisterial District. They're found on Tax Map 42, Parcels 65A and 65B. This case was considered by the Planning Commission after proper advertising and public hearing held on Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. The Planning Commission found the request to be in conformance with Article 3-2-2.3 and in accordance with Article 17 of the zoning ordinance. Upon motion duly carried, the Planning Commission recommends to the Board of Supervisors by a 9-0 vote that the proposed use permit be approved with the following conditions of approval, and there are 5 if you'll bear with me. Number 1, the permit shall only be valid for use by Our Father's House Christian Home. 2, the forthcoming site plan shall be in general conformance with the tendered concept plan by Hinchy & Baines, PLC, dated January 22nd, 2024. Number 3, all lighting fixtures on the parcel, inclusive of residential structures, shall conform with standards found in Appendix A, Article 32, and any forthcoming zoning permit or building permit application for any unit shall include architectural documentation to ensure all lighting fixtures comply with Article 32, the lighting ordinance. Number 4, stormwater containment and controls shall be brought up to current state standards, and any new stormwater created by this expansion shall be treated on the parcel and may not utilize the existing VDOT ditch line as a discharge point. And finally, number 5, all dwelling units shall be built on the overall parent tract unless all criteria for family divisions are met under Appendix B, Article 6, Section 613. Sincerely, Sanford Reeves, Jr.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have a use permit, as Neil read, for our Father's House Christian Home. Mr. and Mrs. Bender have been operating this assisted living facility, as well as cottages on the property that are more independent living that potentially transition to full assisted living on this property off of Belpre Road for many years. They've been before the board before with their original permit many years ago, and then over the years, they've come back a few or half a dozen times almost, or 5 times. And that's because they've grown. They're meeting a need that's been in the community, it still exists in the community, and each time they've grown the number of units to serve the community with. Still Mr. and Mrs. Bender, they're still serving the community in this way. It's still assisted living facility. This specific request would grow the independent living cottages, and they have developed, this is just an existing aerial shot, Mr. Chairman, of what the property looks like today, and you can see how the cottages, and these are duplexes here, but they're individual living cottages, and then the main facilities here. And that's been there for a number of years now. Would be a potentially new property involved if this permit is granted by the Board of Supervisors, and that would involve this property here to the east on Belpre Road. The applicant did submit a concept plan, and as Neil read, the Planning Commission is recommending a condition that it be consistent with this concept plan. You can see where the proposal would be to increase or lengthen the drive aisle here to the north and add additional duplex cottages here. It would be what the applicant describes as a harmony house, which would have staff housing, but also some living arrangements here as well, and then a new community building here with parking lot, and then individual cottages you can see on a loop road on the adjacent property here. Normal agencies, VDOT, the Health Department did review and pass along some preliminary comments as they more or less are at this stage. Any drain field work, entrance work that would be needed for the entrance, stormwater, all would be further discovered through the site plan process if the use permit is ultimately approved by the board. Staff recommends approval, as does the Planning Commission. It was a unanimous recommendation for approval. Mr. Bender is here tonight and can answer any detailed questions you have about his operation and future plans for expansion, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions or comments for staff before we ask the applicant to come up? Mr. Bender, would you like to come up and speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Raymond Bender, and from the Stevensburg District. So I know some of you all probably know us a little better than some of the others do. A few of you all have been here when, as Sam said, we've been here previously a few times, but I thank Susan Gugino because she came out for our Christmas light-up service this past Christmas, so thank you very much, and has been supporting us. And we have been here actually since 2001 is when we first opened the assisted living facility. And I'm sure we probably stood here in the year 1999, I believe, and initially got the conditional use permit. And for the ones of y'all that don't know us quite as well, we are a nonprofit organization, a corporation under the state of Virginia, and my family's actually been doing this for quite a few years. My dad opened the first assisted living facility in Stewart's Draft, Virginia, and it'll make me sound really old, but it was 1975. I was a very little boy at that time, but anyway. So my family's been doing it for quite a while. We have always seen it as ministry more than just business. My wife and I both see it as a calling from the Lord, and you do have to, of course, make ends meet, and to that extent, you have to make it run as a business, of course, to some extent, but that's not our primary mission. And so, anyway, as Sam said, down through the years, it's grown. With our mission being to be ministry, we've kind of kept the assisted living itself a little bit smaller. We have 21 beds in the assisted living facility currently, and then we have, because we've always found that it's If you're interested in ministry, it's more conducive to ministry to run it on a smaller basis. But if you're interested in business, then of course you always want to go larger. And so, but anyway, in that respect, we've kind of kept the assisted living part where we hire staff and so forth. We've kind of kept that smaller. And but we have been adding on some cottages that are for, as Sam said, more independent living. So those people don't necessarily require 24-hour care or that type of thing. So we do have currently 20 of the assisted living, the independent living cottages there. And so our proposal now is to initially add on 10 more cottage or 12 more cottages on the left-hand side there, my left-hand side. And that's on our current property. That would be kind of like phase one. And then Mr. Payne owns the property to the right there. That would be new property that's not currently ours, but it's under negotiation. That would be phase two, probably a couple years down the road. That could be, hopefully, I think it's pretty definite that we might end up getting that property, you know, eventually there, I think. But that would be down the road a little bit. And then, of course, the staffing's always kind of hard to maintain at any of these organizations, and especially if you want to get good staff, which is with being ministry, we do want to have good staff there. And we currently actually have 2 staff that live on the campus, and so the Harmony House, that's what that would do. The word harmony means we'd have elders live downstairs, staff live upstairs, you know, and they could kind of bless each other that way. And but at the same time, it would help us to get staff there too. So that's kind of, I think, in a nutshell, kind of what we're thinking about going forward. We do have, the Lord's blessed us actually with very wonderful staff, and actually more recently, we've had my nephew, he's here this evening. His name is Roger Martin, and he's here actually, and him and his wife have already joined us on a part-time basis, and if we were to expand some, they're very interested in coming full-time once we'd have the finances to get them on board. And actually he's actually my wife's nephew. I have a nephew that lives in Madison that's interested in joining us too. So we do have some reinforcements coming up with staffing, and so that's where you see a little bit on there with some proposals for staff housing and so forth. Anyway, unless y'all have more questions or whatever there.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Pender? I have one question that may be more for staff. When, on the design on this for emergency vehicle, the road width and all, that's, you all have reviewed that to ensure that it's for fire trucks to get back there and that sort of thing? Is that?
Mr. Chairman, that did come up with the Planning Commission as well, and there was actually concern at the Planning Commission level, not necessarily with the width of the driveway, but with the increase of the driveway to the north and not connecting all the way back around. So that is something I know Mr. Bender was going to look into with Mr. Henchy. I don't know if he's further explored that or not, but I know that he was willing to look into that. But the width to date has not been a concern, but there was concern, mentioned at the Planning Commission about bringing that around so that if there was an emergency vehicle needed, that they would have easy access around the loop, basically. And it's similar to what is being proposed on the other side over here.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
Mr. Bender, do you think that would be something that you could?
I think that would be something we could accommodate. That's we actually had initially kind of that proposal. We were the current. We have a circle it's kind of difficult to see it on that plan currently, but it's a circle that goes the whole way around. The road's a little narrower because it's a circle, and this one we initially kept the road wider because we didn't initially realize we were going to go the whole way around there. But I think that could certainly be, I don't mind at all if y'all want to put that on as a condition or whatever. That could. We almost drew it that way to begin with, and we kind of went back and forth there. But that.
I would just hate to see, and let me just say that, your facility out there is top-notch, and I've had more people compliment, you know, you started small, you've grown it over the years, and you provide a great service and a great mission. But I would hate to see that a fire would happen and
Sure,
the
sure.
road's blocked where we can't get, you know, our first responders back there. So that would
Exactly.
definitely be a concern for me.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, I don't foresee that being any problem. I think it flows naturally to go ahead and connect it down in a circle form, I think. That would be, yes.
All right, no other comments or questions from Mr. Bender? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
With that, we will go ahead and open up our public hearing for this application. If there's anyone who would like to come up and speak on this application, raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll open it up for any other questions or comments, or entertain a motion.
I do have one question for staff. So if the Payne property is acquired and Phase 2 commences, will it be a requirement to vacate that property line in between, since there are buildings resident on top of it?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Cugino, yes. The way they have the laid out today, that boundary line that's between the two parcels, which is about right here, would need to be at least moved at the very minimum. So there'd be some type of boundary line adjustment. It's possible that there could be a lot, you know, over here that's, you know, an adjusted lot, if you will, or they could just eradicate that line altogether.
Okay.
But most likely, if this design moves forward, and that would be something that would be a condition upon any site plan approval, that lot line would need to at least be amended or changed. So.
Okay, thank you.
So if we were to want to see the requirement for the for the looping of the road, is that something that we would just add now?
It could be a condition of approval, yes, sir, and that might not be a bad suggestion. There is no standard that I believe that we could point to currently. This is not a subdivision, so there's not a subdivision street standard that would apply. So this is a use permit, but the board does have, through the use permit, through our ordinance, the ability to issue conditions of approval. And the Planning Commission, as you know, suggested a few, and the board could potentially add that as a condition of approval as well.
Thank you, Sam.
All right, I would like to move to adopt the draft resolution of approval as posted with the addition of a condition requiring the completion of the loop on the current vendor property.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Moving on to item 5.02, case number U-2245-23-1, request by Ryan Van Hoven, Deep Roots Home and Garden Center, for a conditional use permit to allow the construction and operation of a garden center and plant nursery. Again, we will turn this over to Neil Drumheller and Sam McLaren to introduce this item.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'll introduce again with a letter from the Planning Commission. Dear Chairman Bates, the Board of Supervisors will consider a request by Ryan Van Hoven of Deep Roots Home and Garden Center for a conditional use permit to allow the construction and operation of a garden center and plant nursery per Article 31 Agricultural Enterprise Use Permit and in accordance with Article 17 Use Permits of the zoning ordinance. The property is zoned A1 Agricultural and is located at the corner of Greens Corner Road, Route 666, and Stevensburg Road, Route 663, in the Stevensburg Magisterial District. It's found on tax map 43, parcel 15. This case was considered by the Planning Commission after proper advertising and public hearing held on Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. The Planning Commission found the request to be in conformance with Article 31 and in accordance with Article 17 of the zoning ordinance. Upon motion duly carried, the Planning Commission recommends to the Board of Supervisors by a 9-0 vote that the proposed use permit be approved with the following conditions, and there are 6. Number 1, no invasive plant species as identified by DCR shall be propagated or sold on the premises. Number 2, all areas to be utilized for the retail sales or special events shall be a minimum of 200 feet from any right-of-way or property line. Number 3, all activities, including any land disturbance, shall maintain a 35-foot riparian buffer from any live water course found on the parcel. Number 4, all lighting on the parcel, inclusive of greenhouses and within the retail agritourism use areas, shall conform with standards found in Appendix A, Article 32, and any security lighting or parking lot lighting shall be turned off or extinguished after business hours and be placed on motion sensor only settings. Number 5, no amplified music or loudspeaker intercom system shall be permitted on the property. And number 6, a site plan in accordance with Article 20 of the zoning ordinance must be approved prior to commencement of any activity associated with the proposed conditional use, and any land disturbance in the proposed use area shall be subject to Chapter 8 Erosion and Sediment Control of the Culpeper County Code. Sincerely, Sanford Reeves, Jr.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is a use permit request for Deep Roots, which is basically a retail garden nursery. They do grow plant stock and trees on the property and finish some of the products as well. It's kind of a hybrid use, if you will, so it's not purely agricultural like we define typically agricultural use. There is a retail component. They do have some product that they don't grow, and Mr. Van Hoven can explain that in further detail if needed. But bottom line is it fit into a little bit unique category, what we call our agricultural use permit, or agricultural structures use permit. It's not something that's used very often, but we're glad to see it be used, and I think this is a good application for it. It's a large piece of property that's currently zoned A1 at the corner of Greens Corner Road and Glenella Road, and also Stevensburg Road there to the east. Mr. Van Hoven hopes to use a corner of the property, and that would be most likely this corner here for this particular use that he's proposing. And the use that he's proposing is already established, just not in Culpeper County today. Deep Roots does have a home in Orange County, and he's been successfully operating there as a retail garden center for a number of years. And he can share a little bit about that, and we actually have some pictures that I believe are worth 1,000 words that shares exactly what he's proposing to accomplish and do on this site. And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go ahead and skip to that one. And this shows the existing operation that Mr. Van Hoven has today. It's from the back. You can see the public road to the front. And he hopes to have a similar setup on this Culpeper property on Greens Corner Road as well. We have a greenhouse, plant stock in the front, some trees here, and then the parking area here. He does hope to have a small what I would call an agritourism component, as well with the retail nursery, and he can explain that in further detail. We did run the process of a normal use permit, so the agencies, VDOT, Health Department, Soil and Water Conservation, and they each passed off some comments, and that's why you saw those proposed conditions as far as riparian buffers and things like that. We took those comments, and the Planning Commission as recommended conditions for the use permit. I don't believe Mr. Van Hoven had any concerns with those conditions, but if he did, he can speak up tonight, and we can work through those. But I think he's ready to move forward as proposed by the Planning Commission and recommended by staff. We feel like it fits the area character fairly well, being a large agricultural piece today. It would support not only the existing agricultural property, but this proposed new use as well. Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions. It is a large property, so there is plenty of room to accommodate the facility. It would be a new entrance, so they would need to work with VDOT to do that. And ultimately, if the use permit's approved, they would have to do a site plan as well, which would flesh out all of that in detail.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions or comments for Sam or Neil? The applicant, Mr. Van Hoven, would you like to come up and elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure, Ryan Van Hoven. Thank you all for having me tonight. Board, it's exciting to be here. Man, I need to hire Sam to come and explain everything that I'm doing. He covered it pretty good. I'm sitting there like, what can I add? For those of you that have not experienced Deep Roots, have never been there, it is essentially a garden center. My background is in the greenhouse industry. My family's had greenhouses, several greenhouses. My little brother actually has a greenhouse located in Culpeper County, Commonwealth greenhouses. And so we kind of grew up with plants and flowers and the indoor farming side of things. And that's essentially what I'm hoping to bring to Culpeper with the retail component. The pictures and what you see of what we currently have at our structure is pretty much exactly what I'm hoping to duplicate at this particular piece of property, with a few enhancements and hopefully some changes. When I bought the existing facility, I had to work with kind of what we had, and we've added a few greenhouses and pieces to it. But the basic structure of what we're hoping to do is keep it as a farm. We're going to have only 5 acres of it is going to be with the rezoning. The other 95 plus acres will be a farming piece, essentially. A lot of it will be hay. We're hoping to have a mum field where we're going to put out outdoor mums, potentially a pumpkin patch for some agritourism, those kind of pieces of bringing the community in and getting a chance to kind of see the farming aspect on kind of a localized, little smaller structure, and excited about that. But the actual garden center part itself the pictures kind of really do speak to it. Typically the way we have it set up is we have a store barn building that's a checkout building with a lot of plants and color and landscaping in the very, very front, kind of as a show. Try to keep it extremely attractive, as you might imagine with a garden center, wanting it to look nice. That helps people shop naturally. We want them to buy things. And so we have a lot of the color up front, and then we use the greenhouses for a lot of more growing. There will be a retail component in the greenhouses as well, but mostly it's for growing and propagating some of our own plants. The reason why it's a little bit of a different structure, I guess, than perhaps what you would typically think of with a greenhouse is we only grow about 50% of our own product. The other 50% is brought in, all from every single bit of it is coming from a Virginia grower of some kind. Most of it comes from my family. Between my brothers, we have 4 greenhouses in the family, all relatively local. And so we bring stuff in from them, a lot of the annuals, perennials, and then we actually finish them off at the property. But sometimes that finishing is all of one day before somebody gets their hands on them. So I can't truthfully say that we grow all of what we would be selling. It really is only about half of it. As you can see from this picture, overview picture of the property, this will be a much smaller version of what we're hoping to do, which is the back and the sides will be more of the farm feel, retention ponds, those kind of things in regards to collection of water. And those pieces there on the sides will be where the pumpkin patch and the mum fields go to the back of the property. The goal is to have the existing farmer that's doing the hay to continue doing that as well. And then hopefully in the future we'll be able to use the property for more agritourism type pieces that we want to have. The very first phase that we're going to have is the site plan to get the retail portion of the actual garden center up and running. The second phase would then be the fields for the pumpkin patch and the mums and those types of things. And then we are proposing down the road something that's a kind of a passion project of mine, which would be a tourism type piece that has to do all around Christmas, a Christmas town feel. But it was suggested by Sam and Neil to push that off to a later date and come back for some conditional, some permits and stuff like that at a later date and focus on those first 2 phases. Which is what was always the plan anyways. So happy to field any questions about what the place might look like, what the plan is, and I can do it to the absolute best of my ability with coming into a piece of property with nothing on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Hoven. Any questions or comments?
I do have a question, Mr. Chairman. So you're saying 50% of the stuff is brought in. Are these going to be brought in small box trucks, large tractor trailers? Because you're talking about very rural roads. The only one that's been improved is Greens Corner Road. Stevensburg Road from both directions is not very navigable with large tractor trailers. How are you planning on bringing in those products?
I bring in almost all of the product on a 20-foot box trailer that I go pick up from the greenhouses myself. We do get tractor trailer deliveries of shrubs and trees, probably about 10 times a year. And so we would have to navigate some way of getting them in, and from looking at the traffic flow and eyeing it up, obviously knowing that I would need to have that. Greens Corner Road coming in and out that way would be really currently the only way that that would work out well. Stevensburg Road is obviously not ideal for that, but we could very easily direct the traffic coming in the one direction
Okay.
from that way, and then turn around on the property and come back out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Van Hoven, had mentioned about the storm ponds. Is that where the primary water comes from? Will you be drilling wells for water usage?
There will be wells for water usage, yes. I would love to, down the road, be able to use the retention pond for recycling the water and using it. In fact, my brothers use that for their greenhouses, but it's a pretty big scale process to be able to do that, and I'd love to see that happen down the road. But for immediate usage, it would be well water that we would use to water the product.
And you wouldn't have any idea the amount of water usage that would?
I would not, off the top of my head.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With that, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Anyone who would like to come and speak on this application, raise your hand, be called upon. Mr. Haight?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Don Haight, Stevensburg. This is a rare opportunity, and I've never seen this opportunity since I've been coming here to the board. We are glad to see more agricultural-related businesses come to Culpeper. This is a good fit and is in alignment with our comprehensive plan, our policy, as well as our ordinance. This business complements Culpeper and assures with preserving the rural character of Culpeper. And we see that printed in many different places on our website and in many documentation that Culpeper supports. Great news for Culpeper community, and the Culpeper community welcomes Deep Root to Culpeper. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to come and speak on this application? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And any more questions or comments, or entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that case U2245-23-1, that we adopt the draft resolution of approval that was posted on board docs.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, Ms. Ellis. Thank you all, and with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Move to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you all.